direction of being an artist.
Right.
And there, my question is, how can I work like a photojournalist and think like an artist?
Right.
I find that, I know people who have studied art, who
Mm-hmm.
have master's degrees in art, and their thinking is more creative and more like an individual, bringing their own thoughts and processes to what they do in art and into photography,
Right.
where my having a taking up journalism in college and liking photography from the days of looking at Life and Look magazine.
Right. Right. Right.
I think like somebody who grew up reading Life and Look.
Yeah. And Life, and especially like Life magazine, even Sports Illustrated, and National Geographic, um, and Vogue, and things like that. If you notice that, especially like Life magazine, National Geographic, that are geared more towards photojournalism, there is still a certain artistic quality to the images. It's not like it's you can't compare it to like the journalistic quality of a newspaper. And there's a lot of elements that go into it. All right, but the first thing we have to understand is, uh, uh, you're not necessarily going to be thinking like an artist. You're going to be thinking like a photographic artist, a photo artist. Because an artist can create from nothing. An artist can invent things. A photographer, while we can kind of invent certain things, we still need certain physical elements that to photograph. Okay. But the first thing you have to understand that there is a very distinct difference between a photojournalist and a photo artist. All right. So in short, a photojournalist captures what is present. Again, it depends on how you want to present it, and the magazine or newspaper you're working for, they have a varying degree of criteria. But in essence, a photojournalist needs to capture a certain truthfulness to the scene. There's no invention allowed. Of course, it could be argued, well, you can very much edit what you show within a photojournalistic photo just by how you crop, just by the angle that you choose, or whatever it is. But the primary principle of photojournalism is to tell the story of what is happening in front of the lens. Whether it's a local news, world news, something that is happening right now. You're documenting a process. You're documenting for historical reasons. All that plays into how you present it. Higher end magazines, well, they want something that is going to be eye catching, as well as informative. So you have to find that balance between telling the truth and creating something that is going to capture the imagination of the reader and pull them into the story, and allow them to explore the story that's presented to them. And hopefully the combination of the images and the story will compel them to some kind of an action. And like this says, the goal is to inform, to evoke some kind of response, some kind of emotion, and more importantly, to document. And while the composition and the timing does matter, the moment itself dictates the shot. So a lot of the times you are reacting to what happens in front of the lens. So, for example, for breaking news, it's not like you can stage what is happening. Think of like a war photographer. They're not going to go to side one and side two. It says, okay, guys, I want you to pose, make it look like you're fighting each other. You bad guy, I want some anger in your face. You back there, I want to see some surprise. You can't, you don't have that ability. Uh, and oftentimes you are taking hundreds of photos of an event in order to be able to cull it down to the 3, 4, 5 images that the publication requires. And of course you're going to pick the very best, but during the process there is a certain mental gymnastics going on with everything that you know about photography: composition, lighting, color, mood, the whole 9 yards, on top of how do I best capture the essence of the story that I want to tell within this one frame. All right, because one frame needs to say a lot. And of course the idiom of uh, uh, a picture paints 1,000 words is never truer in photojournalism. Art photography, on the other hand, is more about expression or creating some kind of intent. It's definitely about crafting the story. You come up with a theme with an idea, and then you collect the parts to tell that story, whatever that story is that you portray. Um, and oftentimes you are putting a lot more effort into the composition, into the choices of props, how the colors within the scene interplay with each other. You're going to choose outfits that coordinate. You're going to choose props that coordinate, and things like that. And of course, unlike photojournalism, with art photography, you can edit the heck out of it. You can invent things. And now that we have generative AI, we can incorporate, generative AI elements to expand on that fantasy that you're trying to create within your art photo. Okay. So let's take a look at the obvious differences between the two, if it hasn't hit you in the face yet. Intent, obviously, with photojournalism, the intent is to inform the viewer, to inform the reader of what is happening in front of the lens. Whereas with artistic photography, it's you're expressing or evoking an emotion. You want to uh, uh, craft something that gives you your viewer a feeling, whether it's something beautiful and peaceful and pastoral, like a lot of the landscapes, or if you're trying to invoke something a little bit more, maybe you're creating a horror scene and you need that kind of like disgust and otherworldly, fantasy stuff. Okay. Uh, and of course, I probably should have put this in order of importance, because I think truthfulness is probably the most important when it comes to photojournalism. You know, you're trying to tell a certain truth with what you're capturing. Um, Again, ethics plays a big part. Some photographers kind of bend this a little bit. And our current, without getting into politics, you understand that our current culture with the media, it's just they tend to swing it one way or the other. So of course, they're going to choose the best angle to fit their narrative. But in essence, photojournalism is about capturing the truthfulness of the situation. All right. Whereas with artistic photography, you can manipulate the heck out of it, and invent things that aren't even there, And if any of you have entered into photo competitions, you know that there are judges that are very strong about invention. They think that if you invent something in front of the camera, it's not really photography. If you're doing a lot of compositing, it's not really photography, even though all the elements you're using are photographic elements. So there's a lot of subjectivity to that. But my feeling is, if it falls under the term of artistic photography, it is up to you as the artist to decide what it is you want in your photograph. If you want to invent something, by all means. If you want to, source 10 different parts and combine them into one whole, go for it. It's your creation. Composition is, obviously, you have to maintain the fundamentals of what good composition is. We have to consider, the rule of thirds, and how elements interact with each other, and having the eye kind of like travel through the image without being forced off the page. Okay. Unfortunately, with photojournalism, because a lot of the times what happens in front of the lens happens very, very quickly. It can happen very spontaneously. So you have a very short window of opportunity to think about your composition. And oftentimes you're just maybe shooting blindly. All right. I just did a bat mitzvah, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. And during the ceremony, I had the ability to pick and choose my shots, my angles. How am I going to approach this, that, or the other? But when it came to the reception, when, got 20 kids bouncing all over the place, I was like shooting blind. It's, click, 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 click. Because everything happens so quickly that you don't have time to think about certain things. All right. Where on the other hand, with, art photography, a lot of times you got a lot of pre-planning that goes into it, so that you can think about your composition before you even get behind the camera. Of course, the storytelling aspect is probably, I would say they're pretty much on par. It's just what you're telling and how you're capturing it. All right. With photojournalism, you're capturing a real life event, whereas with artistic photography, you have a little bit of leeway. Of course, landscapes. Some landscape artists, will do very, very minimal editing, because they want to capture the scene as it really exists. But what they'll do is maybe they'll enhance the colors, they'll enhance the mood, they'll remove distractions that wouldn't be missed if somebody were actually looking at it in real life. They're not moving buildings. Maybe they're, removing a branch. They're removing a little bush. All right, things like that. So you have a little bit more leeway. The audience or the editing, obviously photojournalism, very minimal. Again, it depends on the publication. Some publications like sports photography, there's pretty much no editing involved. You take it from the camera, it goes out to the publication, and it gets printed as is. Okay. Photojournalists, war photographers, disaster photographers. There's usually very minimal editing in that. Maybe they're correcting for some exposure problems. They're correcting for camera angles, things like that. But other than that, that's about it. Whereas with artistic photography, the world's your oyster. You can edit it till it doesn't look like anything that you originally photographed. Okay. uh then we get into things like the audience impact. uh they impact two different things. With photojournalism, your audience wants to know what is happening in my world. All right, show me what is happening in my world. Whereas with artistic photography, it's the complete opposite. Show me what's in your world. All right, show me what's in your head. All right, I want to see your interpretation of the world. All right, I want to see your fantasies. Okay. The use of light. Uh, uh, Again, this goes uh, to the intent of the publication with photojournalism. Some say, natural light only. Some say, well, minimal flash. We don't want to look at the image and see that there was obvious flash use. So photojournalists may use a flash to kind of fill in shadows, to open up shadows rather. Um, you know, but again, if you're shooting a wedding, uh, flash is a thing, because a wedding, well, that kind of crosses both from photojournalism into artistic photography as well. Okay. And then, of course, time sensitivity. Like I said, photojournalism, sometimes you need it right away, that hour, that minute. Okay. Whereas with art photography, you can take a week, a month, a year to put something together. One artistic image that I saw that I thought was pretty cool was a pastoral scene, with a little fence and some trees, and the image was split up into four parts, but there were no definite themes. It was kind of like soft transitions from one scene to the other, and it was literally spring, summer, fall, winter. All right. And it was one scene. You can see the entire scene, the meadows, the trees, the fence, the whole 9 yards. But there were very distinct columns of the different seasons. that doesn't happen right away. That takes a full year to accomplish. So it's how you intend to present your artistry. Okay. But again, even though there are two distinct differences between the two, there are a bunch of overlapping similarities. Visual storytelling, both of them aim to tell some kind of story. All right. You want to engage your audience into the image. You want them to think about what it is you're presenting to them. Composition absolutely matters on both sides. If you have bad composition, nobody's going to want to, linger with your image. Obviously, you can get away with, a little bit sloppier composition with photojournalism, because oftentimes that is accompanied with text, and the image enhances the text, and the text kind of explains the image. So there's this symbiotic, going on, symbiosis going on between the two. Emotion. All right. Both of them, you want to engage the viewer emotionally. All right. With photojournalism, obviously, it's very important to engage them emotionally, because oftentimes there may be a call to action, with news events, with local events, fundraisers, things like that. You want to engage your audience to maybe give a contribution, rally to a cause. All right. Spread the word, what's going on. This is terrible. We must, raise the flag and fight against this injustice. All right. There's usually some call to action. Okay. With artistic photography, that call to action may be, oh, buy this to hang on your wall. Look how beautiful this is. If it engages them on a very strong emotional level, they're going to say, oh, I want this as a print to hang on my wall. I want to own this image. Okay. If at the very least you want them to at least engage longer than a quick glance. All right. Yeah, they may not be interested in hanging it on their wall for, the rest of their lives, but, at least capture their attention for 5 minutes, 10 minutes if you can, Light and shadow, it's photography. You can't have photography without light. All right. And flat light is boring light. So you want good light. You want light that works with whatever emotion it is that you're trying to evoke. Both types of photography require a trained eye. With artistic photography, obviously, you're crafting it from scratch, but yet you're still thinking in terms of composition. You're still thinking in terms of flow through the image. How am I going to pose the model? How am I going to place the props? How am I going to present the subject in relation to its background? Okay. With photojournalism, it's pretty much the same way. All right. Do I shoot wide to tell a bigger story? All right. Or do I get in close to become a little bit more personal and engage on a more personal level? Do I take it from a higher angle, lower angled, over the shoulder? All right. Is it a, from the subject's point of view, or is it from the viewer's point of view? So all these things play. And of course, we can always thank uh, um, mental block, Henry Cartier-Bresson, for coining the term the decisive moment. Okay. With artistic photography, oftentimes we have the luxury of anticipating that moment. With photojournalism, we have to really read what is happening in order to anticipate that moment, and then be quick, because sometimes that moment happens in an instant. Okay. All of that requires practice. It requires the ability to understand what it is you're looking at. All right. And of course, technical skill goes without saying. If you can't use your camera, you're not going to take a good picture, period. If you're fumbling with, your exposure or your focus or whatever it is, the moment's going to happen and it's going to go bye-bye. All right. Obviously, with artistic photography, you have a little bit more leeway, but it depends on what you're shooting. If you're shooting something that requires action, let's say you're doing something creative with dancers, okay? Well, if you don't nail it in the first, second, or third shot, after a while, the dancers are going to start getting a little bit pissed off at you for not getting the shot, because they're human. They're going to get tired. They're going to say, "Oh, God damn it, I did this thing 10 times, You should have gotten it in the third shot." All right. And of course, there's the viewer's perception. All right. Both of those you can manipulate to a certain extent to manipulate how your viewer sees the subject, sees the scene, views the event. All right. So all of that. So hopefully that gives you a little understanding. But when it comes to blending the two together, what I would suggest is, if you have the luxury to analyze the situation when you are in a photojournalistic event, all right, oftentimes what I will do is I'll capture the moment, because I don't know if that moment's going to disappear. All right. After I capture it, if I look at it and it says, wow, there's something here that I can explore artistically. If you have the time, then you say, okay, I've captured it for posterity's sake. That's in the bag. Let me now explore. It says, hey, do me a favor. Do that again, but do it like this, or do that again, and then you move to a different angle, or you shift your focal point, or you shift your angle of view. All right, maybe you come in a little bit tighter. Okay, maybe you adjust your exposure to create a different mood with the lighting. All right, so those are things that you can do. All right. And then of course, with certain events, like for example, weddings, mitzvahs, some corporate events, what other engagement sessions. All right. You're there to capture that event, but people understand that they are there to also give of their time to you as the artist. All right. You're not just a photographer capturing the event, you're also a photographic artist. All right. And they're going to expect you to pose them. They're going to expect you to take a part of that time to do the formals. And the formals is where you can then be creative. All right. Be creative with lighting, be creative with color. All right. Um, and of course, it all depends on how many tools are in your tool bag that you can pull out at that moment. Okay. So if you have a few tricks that you can do with a couple of speed lights, by all means, take the time, set it up, manipulate your subject to get that more artistic look, but yet you're still documenting the event. It's still part of their event history. Okay. But you're taking it to that next level by uh, shifting from I'm just capturing what's in front to I am making something in front of the camera. Does that make sense?
I have to turn the mic on.
All
Yes,
right.
yes.
So just look for the areas where you find that they blend naturally. All right. And if you have a hard time finding where they blend naturally, just stop and think about the situation. It says, okay, I have a few minutes where I'm looking for something to photograph. All right. Because I don't know how many events you photograph, but there are often times during an event where what is happening in front either happens slowly or it's very repetitive. They're doing the same thing over and over again. There's only so many pictures of the same thing that you can take a picture of. All right. So there you have a little bit of time to say, okay, how can I play with this scene to make it a little bit more artistic? All right. Or let me step away from that and let me try something. I'll pull somebody aside and say, okay, I have some time. Let's play around with this. Okay. Whether it's, a portrait session, where you have a couple lights set up, or you just take them from, because some events, you have no control of the background. They're in this, hotel room, conference room, some room that's got, very bland looking walls. And
Or a
there's,
divey bar.
or a divey bar, yeah. Although
We
divey
we've had
bars,
we've had that in a cable access
yeah,
situation.
you know, so it's like, yeah, okay. I've taken all the shots in here. All right. Uh, I got 6 of them. Do I need 12? No. So instead of continuing to take the same boring shots, let me take this person out. Hopefully you've done your circuit through the venue and you say, oh, and identified, oh, that's a place. There's a spot. Oh, that's pretty. All right. And it says, hey, let me borrow you for a couple minutes. Let's go over here. I want to take some shots. All right. And at that point, you can be a little bit more creative. All right. But keep your ear out to what's going on in there, because if the mood shifts, guess what? Your job is to document. So, take the shots and then say thank you very much and then go back to doing the boring stuff, you know? So, anyway, hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what you can do.
Thank you. I have one other question
Yeah.
about event. And it involves speed light. Every time I go to a wedding, it's like I look at the photographers and see what they're doing. And as you know, I use a speed light and
Yep.
I aim the speed light to the ceiling and I have a bounce card behind the speed light. The photographer at the wedding, and the ceiling was 12 feet high. The ceiling was dark, but it was still a white ceiling.
Mhm.
They did not use a bounce card. They had the speed light straight up. So I've been playing around with it today at home to try it with the speed, with the speed light just
Mhm.
playing up without the bounce card, with the bounce card,
Right.
and just having the light at the subject, but having a what do you call it, a diffuser,
Yep.
a real diffuser
Yeah.
on that. And of course, I'm going to be taking pictures of people. And I found that using the diffuser was the best. Using the bounce card was the second best. But because this is a senior citizen event, I'm more inclined to use the bounce card because some people might be annoyed by flash in front of them.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't know if being
Give me one second. I'm gonna grab my flash real quick.
okay.
Actually, I'm gonna grab a couple. Did I put it over here? Oh yeah, it's right here. Duh. All right. But I grabbed this one. Hold on. I'm like I went to grab my Canon flash and like it's not there. And it's not there because it's right here.
Yes.
All right.
I saw it when you walked away and said you were getting your flash.
Well, I also wanted to get this one. Uh,
Okay.
but yeah, so
Mine is like the one behind you. There we are.
yeah, so I knew that. That's why I wanted to grab this one.
Okay.
But I also wanted to grab this one because I wanted to show a few little differences. Okay. Um, uh, I don't know where my diffuser is for this, but you know what it is. It's that
Yes. Yes. Mhm.
rectangle thing that goes on here.
Yes.
All right. Now, when you are flashing straight into somebody's face, they're
Of
going to
course,
get
I'd be using a diffuser. I'd be using a cloth diffuser.
oh,
Mhm.
okay.
But
Well,
it's like a cloth. You buy it in a store. It's a 6x9, something like that diffuser. Um, hold on,
okay. So yeah. So
hold
basically,
on 1 second. Let me get
it's
it
like
out
a
of the
little
closet. Hold
little
on.
mini softbox, right?
Yeah, it's like a soft. Yeah, it's like a soft
Yeah.
box. Yeah, yeah. It's here we are.
All right. Yeah, I actually have something similar that I DIY'd a long time ago. But there are several elements at play here. Okay.
Do you see? Here we are. This is what I have. And maybe it's hard to see because of the chroma key. There we are. The yeah, it's kind of hard to see with the chroma key here.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
see it?
yeah.
That's what I have.
I kind of got a glimpse of it. All right. So anyway, oops, wrong one. There we go. Pressing the wrong buttons. Okay. The key to these, well, the benefit to this is of course the portability. All right. That's probably the only benefit for these is the portability. Aside from that, they have a lot of problems. They're not very powerful. All right. Uh, they're not very modifiable. All right. Small light is still a small light unless you want to walk around with something huge to put these in. And at that point, if you're walking around with a large diffuser, a large modifier, why bother with this? Just get a large light, right? But these are great because they're portable and you can adapt them to a lot of situations when you're running and gunning. All right. The modern ones, they can tilt, all right, and of course they can rotate, all right. That means while they are on top of the camera, you can aim it where you need it, all right. And obviously, if you aim it straight at a person, you're going to get flat light. So the key is to bounce it off of something or get it off the camera where it's to the side somewhere. Okay. Either with a cable or with a remote control. I have a bracket that allows me to raise it slightly higher, still pretty much on axis. But what I tend to do is I tend to bounce it off of my environment. All right. Which is what you saw. All right. Now, typically, what we want is we want to use the angle of incidence, angle of reflection law, where we aim it at the ceiling, it bounces off the ceiling, and it comes back down in the opposite direction, all right, and hopefully towards our subject, all right. So ceiling, we shoot it up, it bounces back down. If there's a wall or something on the side, you shoot it towards the wall, it bounces back towards your subject, correct? Okay. That kind of shooting to the side is probably a little bit more preferable, because what happens is you're lighting one side, which of course creates a natural shadow on the other side, which gives you that three-dimensional look. It avoids that flat look. Okay. But oftentimes what happens is, we're running and gunning. If we're not putting too much thought into this, all right, my default is I tend to angle it not straight at them, not straight up at the ceiling. Okay. I
Yeah, the
angle it.
person was doing it straight up at the ceiling. That's what
Yeah,
confused me.
that's fine. All right. Their preference. All right.
Hmm.
My preference is I tend to aim it a little bit forward. Okay. The reason I do this is because, all right, if I am shooting it straight up at the ceiling, can you see my light? The
No,
light.
no.
Okay. You see the speed light, but you don't see the light emission. Okay.
Hmm.
Because it's
Right.
pointing straight up. Okay. If the subject cannot see the light source, it cannot reflect that light source.
Okay.
Okay.
See, when I showed up, I used the bounce card too, and she didn't use a bounce card.
Right. So what happens is, if there's nothing for the eyes to reflect, you're not going to get that specularity in the
Oh,
eyeballs.
okay.
All right. Unless there's something in the background, like a window or something that's bright. Okay.
Hmm.
But if you're shooting in the evening, you're not going to get that. Okay. So a lot of photographers, in order to get those little catch lights, will either angle it a little bit forward. Doesn't need to be much. You can see that all I got to do is angle it just a tiny little bit. And now we have something that the eyes can reflect. Okay. If you're shooting straight up and you want something to reflect, oftentimes they'll pull up the card. Okay. The
Hmm.
flash, you can see, is still up and down. But now this, because the light will hit this and illuminate it, now the eyeball, your subject's eyeball, has something to reflect. And this is going to create a catch light. Okay.
Okay.
So obviously, the other consideration here is the square law. Okay. The higher the ceiling, the more light you're going to lose. The lower the ceiling, the more you're going to get to bounce down. So that's going to be a consideration. If you have low ceilings, yeah, I might, point it more up than forward. Okay. If I got really high ceilings, or if I have dark ceilings, I'm not going to waste all my light into something that's not going to work for me. I'll find something else. I'll either, bounce it, I'll aim it forward a little bit more, or I'll find something, either a wall behind me or a wall to the side to bounce this off of. Okay. But it's about maximizing the size of your light. All right. That's why going straight in, this is going to be the size of your light. All right. And if it's on axis with the camera, it's going to be very flat lighting. Okay. All right. So this is my old flash. That's why it sits here. My new flash is this one here, which is the Godox V1.
V1
And
as in Victor.
Victor 1, correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually here, I'll show it. All right. And it's
Okay.
got the letter C that says that's for Canon. All right. N for Nikon, and I don't know, for Sony, I think. Sony and Fuji and all the other, I don't know what designation. Okay. When I bought that flash, I also bought this little accessory kit. Okay. And it comes with all right, this nice little foot here. All right. Doesn't come with the flash, it came with the accessory. Or maybe it did come with the flash and I just shoved it in here. I don't know. It comes with all kinds of little accessories. And the nice thing is that it's magnetic. All right. So we have all these magnetic accessories that can on top of each other. All right. We have barn doors. Okay. So we can get a little bit creative with our lighting. All right. So we can close this up, and instead of a widespread light, we can create a sliver of light that just, maybe cuts across your subject. Okay. Again, it's about getting creative, artistic. All right. We have a kind of not really a Fresnel diffuser, but it is a diffuser of some type. I don't really use that one. Okay. It does come with a little card holder. All right. So if you like shooting with that little pop-up card, this doesn't have a pop-up card because it's got a round head, but it does come with this little attachment that allows you to put a card in here. All right. And it comes with a card. All right. And if you don't like it, you can get an index card and just shove it in there, and it just basically goes right in there, and you have your little pop-up. All right. The one that I like to use a lot is it comes with a grid. Okay. So when I do portraits, I'll have two big lights for my key lights, and I'll use this as my background light, and it creates this nice little circle right behind the subject. Okay. And because it's a grid, it controls it and keeps it to just, I typically put it so it's poking just over their shoulders. All right. So it allows me to be a little bit more creative with my lighting. Okay. And the last thing, it comes with, color filter holder. And the nice thing is you can stack these. Okay. But the reason I'm mentioning, oh boy. My voice is going already. The reason I brought this out is because of this. This is my go-to diffuser. Okay. It's a dome, unlike the square one that you're familiar with, which is, square, circle, it doesn't matter. It's still a diffuser. All right. What this does is it allows the light to really travel everywhere. It spreads it. Without it, that light's just pretty much going to go straight up if you're pointing it at the ceiling. You do get some spill. There is a certain amount of angle to the dispersion, but you put this on, it really increases the angle of dispersion of your light. The other thing is, no matter where I'm aiming this, because sometimes I'll take this and I'll aim it backwards, right? You can see this,
Mhm.
unlike the Canon, this one allows me to go from 90 degrees forward to 45 degrees back without
Mhm.
having to swivel it around. All right. So sometimes I will put this above, on camera. It's pointing behind me, but guess what? That dome is still sending a certain amount of light forward, which is going to create catch lights. All right.
Mhm.
Which is also going to create a certain amount of illumination. All right. Yeah, the majority of the light's moving back, but I also have some light coming forward. Okay. So all that really helps me to control how I get my light. Okay. So it's about how you manipulate this in order to get the light that you want. All right.
Mhm.
Is one better than the other? It's subjective. It really is. All right. It's some photographers like really, really soft light. It's very difficult to get very soft light from this unless you're bouncing it.
Mhm.
So your answer may be that I'm going to bounce it off of anything and everything, whether
Okay.
it's a high ceiling or a distant wall. I'm going to bounce it. The downside
Um,
to that is the further away your bounce is, the more power you need to pump through that in order to get enough light coming back. All
okay.
right. And also, you may need to go up on your ISO. Right.
I'm shooting at the AquaTurf in another week. So that's a
Yeah.
high ceiling.
Yeah. And then, and then that's just light.
Yes.
Then we get into color,
Okay.
color cast. Okay.
Yes.
If your flash is not overpowering the ambient, all right, then you're going to get a mix of whatever ambient lights are, whether they're
Mm.
LEDs or fluorescence or incandescence or whatever it is. Okay. So you have a color cast from the light. You have, these are rated to be fairly neutral, what's called daylight color. Okay.
Mhm.
So now you have, something at maybe 4,800, and you have this at 55, and then you have a green wall or a taupe wall or a burgundy wall. All right.
Oh,
Or a taupe wall next to burgundy curtains. All of
that's
that.
like
Yeah.
that's like a cheap event I had to do a couple of years ago. I think the ceiling was maybe only 7 feet high, 8 feet high. It was a church. It was the old type of fluorescent lights. There were yellow walls and not purple. What's that other color? Magenta walls, something magenta or
Okay.
purple.
Yeah.
So I had all sorts of bad
Yeah.
color cast.
Yeah. Yeah. So guess what? It's going to make your editing so much more difficult. Okay.
Mhm.
And you're going to find that the closer you are to a wall, the more of a color cast you're going to get than if you're a little bit further away. All right.
Mhm.
Um, If you have white ceilings and a yellow wall, right? If you bounce your light towards the ceiling, you're going to get a little bit more of a neutral light. But if you say, oh, I'm going to now take my light that was aimed at the ceiling, I'm now going to turn it towards the wall, guess what? That one's going to look a lot more yellow. Okay, so now as you're editing, you're going to see your color balance is going to be all over the place, all over the place. Okay, can't be helped. It is what it is. We can't control what the venue paints their walls. We can't control what they use for lights. All right, we just have to deal with what it is. Okay, oftentimes what will happen is, all right, like a buddy of mine does commercial real estate. Uh, he knows that he's going to be, photographing in a building that has fluorescent lights or LED lights, or maybe there's a lot of natural light coming through the windows. He'll take his lights and he'll gel them to match the lights that are present in the space or coming through the windows, in order to minimize that chaotic color cast. All right. But when you're in an event, that's difficult to do. So oftentimes we just have to, play with the cards we're given. All right. But that's something that you can play with. All right. If you're doing something with a DJ, the DJ may have crazy colored lights. At that point, you want to use their colors. All right. Because it adds a certain element of artistry to your images. You're not going to kill that light, because it's part of the event. The people who are dancing there are dancing to the red and the blue lights. You take photos and all of a sudden there's no red and blue lights. Well, guess what? It's like, did you photograph the event that I was at? I remember red and blue lights. Where are the red and blue lights? Don't edit them out. Matter of fact, maybe enhance them a little bit more, So, but yeah, so that's some of the things that you have to consider with your flash. And the best thing, again, there's no one solution that fits it all. You're going to have to weigh everything on a as is basis. All right. Okay. And I've been to events where, they have multiple rooms. The worst one I ever did, the main hall, where the dining area, 3 of the walls were glass looking out to the outside, and the event was at night. So guess what was on the other side of the glass wall? Black.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what I could not bounce off of?
Oh.
Don't bounce off those walls. All right. And if I was on the opposite side, guess what reflected my flash? 3 walls. Floor to ceiling glass. All right. And the ceilings were a good 14 feet tall, if not taller. Okay. It was horrendous. Okay. But I walked through the door to the bar area. The bar area had 10-foot ceilings that were dark wood. All right. So they reflected a little bit of light because it was shiny, but it was, dark, I don't know, mahogany, teak, whatever it was. All right. So the majority of the light there was absorbed by, this vacuous dark ceiling, So that was not a good time for me. You need to find ways of getting creative with your lighting very, very quickly. So I had to raise my ISO up to this astronomical, uh, you know, level. It is what it is, you know. So anyway, hopefully that answered a lot of your questions.
Thank you, Doug.
All right.
Luckily I have a full frame camera and I could get away with 800 ISO.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, the nice thing about modern software is that you can take that and even reduce it in post.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
all right. How are we doing for time? All right. Next question came from Brian. Brian, did you want to ask the question live, or you want me to just go ahead and do you
Go
remember?
ahead because I forgot the question.
We were having that discussion about editing,
Okay. Is this over at your
and
place?
what's that?
Was this at your place?
Yeah,
Okay.
and you said that sometimes you have a hard time mapping out how you want to edit an image.
Right, right. Well, I think what I was saying was that when we're watching you, everything seems to make perfect sense. And then if I don't, and I don't usually go back and redo it the next day, then when I sit down to it, I go, what the heck was he doing to get this thing? And I'll tell you what brought it up specifically. I was given a really old photo to restore. And this was old, both in terms of it's an old photograph, scratches in the background, but even pieces of the paper had been ripped off, you know.
Right.
You know, so something, and so my thought was when I've seen on things, and I think we've done it, is some way take that layer, split it out, and then do some magic to get rid of all the junky stuff. But yeah, overall, sometimes I sit down and I go, what should I be doing first? And I think the other thing we were talking about was just in terms of when you're looking at a photo, like when you go over it and you say, well, we need to do this and this and this, that makes sense. But there are times when I don't know what needs to be done anyway. Like, you know, bring in some shadows or some light, you know, and anyway, those are things that I.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can clarify some of that for you. All right. So let me find an image here. And let me go ahead and share my screen. Share. There we go. Okay. All right. Everybody sees let's put this over here. My little choo-choo train. Okay. The simplest order of event that I can give you is pretty much a two-step process with three parts to the second step, I think. Okay. So step one is going to be normalize. Okay. So what do I mean by normalizing a photograph? All right. The first thing that I do with every single image is I ask one question. What is wrong with this image? Okay. And the first thing that I want to do is I kind of want to prep the image for some form of artistic interpretation. Okay. Now, we had the discussion about photojournalism and artistic photography. And even though photojournalism has a little bit stricter regulations about what you can do artistically, there is still a certain amount of editing that falls under the artistic part of this workflow that I'm going to explain. Okay. So part one is normalize. Okay. Part two, this is my artistic interpretation. Okay. Artistic interpretation. Now, this second part is very subjective. Okay. Very subjective. But part one, we can look at it very objectively. Okay. Objectively, we can tell if an image is crooked, if our camera was a little bit, off angle. The camera rig that I use when I shoot events is very heavy. I have a camera with a battery pack. As a matter of fact, oh no, I can't show you because it's part of it is out in the car. It is on a bracket that allows me to independently move the camera from the position of the flash. Okay. And then on top of the bracket, I have my flash. So my gear that I use for normal event photography, actually for the majority of the photography that I do, weighs like 50 pounds. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but it's heavy. And what often happens is that I find that the majority of the images that I shoot are canted a little bit. Okay. And my rule is if you're going to have a angle to your horizon, it better look deliberate. So if you have an angle that's 1 degree, 2 degrees, it's going to look like a mistake. But if you have an angle that's 5 degrees or 10 degrees, that looks like it was done on purpose and you can get away with it. Okay. So the first thing I do is I check my horizon. I check my uprights. All right. Make sure that they are upright. Make sure that they are horizontal. Okay. The other thing is that falls under this normalized category. All right. Well, so here we can put horizon. All right. / angles. Okay. The second part is cropping. How I want to present my subject within the confines of that frame. I put it into the normalized category, but oftentimes I'll save that part till the very end after I've done, the majority of my editing. But usually it comes up in the very beginning, all right, of how I want to crop it, because that may also guide how I do my artistic editing. Okay. Now that I've said that, one thing that you have to do is keep yourself open to change. Keep yourself open to alternatives. Because what often happens is I'll be editing with a certain thing in mind, and then I'll do something, and then it just, wow, I just had this idea that I'm heading in this direction, but this new idea has me going in this direction. Okay. And you have to be open to that kind of change in direction. All right. So leave yourself open. Okay. The other thing I'm going to look for is my exposure. All right. Because sometimes I might miss my exposure. It may be a little bit over, it may be a little bit under. Okay. But not necessarily so much my exposure, but my dynamic range. Okay. Sometimes the dynamic range will be off. All right. Cameras have a way of being able to capture a smaller exposure range than your dynamic range. So you may have sections of your image that, for example, will have brighter highlights than you want. Everything else looks good, but just those highlights are a little bit hot. Okay. So the only solution for that is to bring the highlights down. Okay. Can you classify it as artistic, interpretation, an artistic edit? You could, but the way I look at it, that is correcting a problem that my camera caused. All right. It's not something that I purposely decided I wanted to do. I didn't take the shot saying, I want my highlights a little bit too hot. No, usually that's what happens. Okay. Again, usually because I try to shoot, to preserve my shadows a little bit more too. So you have to find that balance, and sometimes something gives. All right. Now I use the highlights as an example, but it could be that your shadows are too dark. Your highlights are perfect, but that causes your shadows to be a little bit too dark. So you're going to open up your shadows in order to increase the dynamic range that you initially lost. Okay. So angles, cropping, and my exposure dynamic range. And the last one that I look for is my color balance. Okay. Color balance is very easy to fix in Lightroom, all right, and in Camera Raw. Just move the slider until it looks good to your eye, or you use the eyedropper to select something that is relatively neutral, and it'll auto balance it for you. Okay. Oftentimes, what I find that when I auto balance it, sometimes it makes it a little bit too cool. All right. And to me, sometimes images look, especially images with people, look better when it's a little bit on the slightly warmer side. So whatever the autocorrect gives me, I might warm it up. Okay. But that pretty much is my very, very first step. And it's gotten to the point where I do it automatically. I don't even think about it. And of course, now that we have the AI built into Lightroom, where it can kind of sort of correct this for us as we import the images, this is becoming something less and less that I worry about. Is my dynamic range and my color balance. Okay, so all I have to really worry about is my cropping and my horizon and angles. Okay, and correcting what the program can't handle yet. Okay, all right. Any questions about this? Kind of makes sense? All right. Now, again, it's easy when I explain it. Okay. But when we're off the air, that's where, and trust me, I've been there, I've experienced it. It's experience, and putting it into practice and getting it to the point where it becomes habit. All right. So in the meantime, all right, maybe you want to do what I did. I wrote it down. The first times that I started working with Lightroom and Photoshop, especially going from one to the other, I wrote my workflow down so that I won't forget a step, and two, I didn't have to fumble. I That was the most frustrating part for me when I was first learning, was fumbling, trying to remember what that next step was, or trying to figure out what do I need to do with this image. Okay, I hated that fumble. All right, so what I ended up doing is I wrote down my workflow. Okay, and keep in mind, what you write down is going to change. It will change. Okay, things will go on that list, things will come off that list, and the order of things will eventually start changing as well. Okay, everybody edits differently, so what I explain here may not be necessarily what you finally end up with. I'm just giving this to you as a start. Okay, so now we have our normalization. Time to look into doing our artistic interpretation. Okay, and the artistic interpretation is going to be a little bit more surgical, and a little bit more subjective. Okay, now the other thing is, the first step, the normalized step, all that is pretty much global edits, meaning it's going to affect the entire image, top to bottom, left to right. The artistic interpretation, the artistic edits, some will be global, but the majority are going to be very local. You're going to be using masks. Okay. You're going to be using sliders that target very specific parts of your image. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right. The artistic interpretation is going to very much depend on your image. Okay, and what it is telling you. Okay, it's going to take a while for you to develop your look. All right, it's going to take a while to instinctively know what it is that you want to change in an image. All right, so let's go with the obvious things. Okay, I definitely want to highlight my main subject. I want to make sure that really, really, really stands out. Okay, it's pretty much rule number one in composition. Okay, you want the viewer to connect with your main subject and not have to second guess what it is that they are looking at. All right, so you want to make sure that there's nothing that is going to compete with your subject. Okay, the other is going to be flow. Okay, you want the eye to be able to flow through your image and obviously land on your main subject, but you also want to invite them to look around the image, but not off the image. Okay, so you want to make sure that whatever you edit kind of brings you back in. Okay, and that's pretty much my golden rule for all the artistic editing that I do, is I want to keep that in mind. What's my main subject? Okay. And how do I keep the flow within the four walls of my image? Okay. But like I said, there's three elements to this second part. All right. One is light, all right, or luminosity. Okay. The other one is color. And the third is texture. You've heard me talk about this before. Those are the three things that you're going to be editing in every single image. You're going to be editing your light, you're going to be editing your color, and you're going to be editing your texture. Okay? And there are certain goals that you want for all of these. You want some kind of harmony, all right, between elements, okay? And to a certain extent, contrast between elements, okay? So if you have light, you definitely need shadow, okay? How much that contrast is between the two, again, it's very subjective. It depends on your subject, okay? Colors, all right? If you have colors that are too similar to each other, things are going to blend into each other. So oftentimes I look for some kind of color harmony where we have contrasting colors. We either have, or maybe a triad of colors, okay? And we can do a whole session on color theory. All right, we have analogous colors, we have contrasting colors, we have all kinds of combinations. All right, I tend to kind of simplify things in my head to a very basic warm and cool. Okay, so if I have a warm subject, I might want to cool off the background or vice versa. Okay, because that's one of the easiest things to manipulate within an image. All right, so if you're having a hard time, with your color adjustments or your mental block, your color profiles, all right, just keep it to very simple, cool, warm contrast. Okay, warm colors: oranges, yellows, yellow greens. Okay, warm reds. Okay, brighter magentas. Cool colors tend to have blues, blue greens, okay, violets, things like that. All right. Texture is another one. All right. Oftentimes, this is a little bit more tricky because a lot of times we get our texture from what it is that we're photographing. So this may be something that you think about during, when you're initially taking your photograph. All right. If you have a subject that is, wearing very busy clothing, don't put them against a busy background. Put them against a very clean, simple background, or vice versa. If somebody is wearing very simple, solid colors, smooth textures, put them against something that has, some texture to it. Floral background, leaves, drapery, things like that. Okay. But we can also manipulate texture by what is in sharp focus and what is blurred out. When you blur something, you're softening it. You're taking the edges off. All right. Whereas something that is in sharp focus has very sharply defined edges, all right, creating texture within that edge contrast. Okay. So that's something that we can do in post-processing, especially now that Lightroom has introduced, the lens blur, where we can now introduce blur to the background in order to create that texture contrast between subject and background. We just soften up that background a little bit, and guess what? Your subject is immediately going to pop off. Okay? So that's probably as simple as I can explain. We lost Bob, and now he's coming back. And of course, I gotta get rid of my drawing. Okay. That's probably as simple as I can break down the workflow. Okay. All right. Where the trick is being able to analyze your image, finding out what part of that workflow it fits in, and then utilizing the proper editing tool to accomplish what you want. Okay. So let's take a look at this example image, and I'm going to have you guys tell me what needs to be done. All right. I'm not going to tell you what needs to be done. I want you guys to tell me what needs to be done. So first thing we need to do is we need to normalize this, and we really can't see a horizon line, and there are no uprights per se. There are uprights within the train, and if we look at it, we can kind of sort of see that our uprights are pretty much up and down. Okay, so as far as angles, I think we're pretty good. All right. There is no horizon to observe, so we can't go by that. Okay. So that takes care of that. It's a non-issue. Okay. The dynamic range. All right. What do you think of our dynamic range? Okay, because that's the other part of normalizing. Any suggestions?
So by dynamic range, and I guess it's because of a lot of these raw files that it just looks kind of flat right now.
Absolutely. Yes. So how do we fix that?
I got some magic dust.
Okay. Well, all right. So let's not think about the tools just yet. Let's think about the fundamental underlying process that needs to happen. All right. So just looking at the image, all right, what do we need to do with this image to make it less flat? All right. And at this point, ask yourself, what does flat mean?
When I look at this, my thought is, and I'm not talking about the slider, but overall, it needs some contrast.
Contrast. Yes,
It needs
absolutely.
contrast and light. Well, I guess the things you're talking about, light, color, and texture. But yeah, there are things that need to be brought out, I guess, and then things that maybe you can push back.
Yep. All right. You're going to notice that the overall theme for the majority of the edits that you make, whether it's in the luminosity part, the color part, or the texture part, is that keyword contrast. Okay. Contrast, obviously very subjective. Contrast could be very far apart. Black and white. You can't get further apart than the extremes, black and white. Okay. Color, yellow and blue. They're on opposite sides of the color wheel. All right. Here's the color wheel. Okay. Red and cyan, opposite colors. Green and magenta, totally opposite colors. All right. You cannot get more contrasty than those. All right. And then, of course, texture. Rough texture and smooth textures are complete opposites of each other. Okay. So that's the extreme contrast. Everything else is gradation, salt and pepper to taste. Okay. So here we have something that we've cataloged as being flat. How does that relate to contrast? All right. I'll give you a hint. If you are stuck on how your light is interpreted in the image, let's try this. Okay. Look at this. All right. That will tell you everything you need to know about your image. Okay. All right. So analyzing this, all right, knowing that this is the key, all right, what do we have, what does this show us?
You know, it's interesting you bring this up because I've noticed the last couple of weeks when, before I start doing anything, I'll take a look at that curve or that
Histogram.
histogram. And like you said, I'll sit around and play first, try and get, well, turn it into a standard normal deviation hump.
No,
No?
don't do that because not every image conforms to that middle hump. Not every image conforms to that middle hump. Okay. You can see that there is no middle hump here
Right.
at all. Okay. My middle hump for this image is completely gone, non-existent. All right. We have a big hump in the shadows part, and we have a medium hump in the highlights part. But in the midsection, the midtones, very little. Okay. So that tells me that in essence, we have a fairly contrasty image. All right. If we look at if we were to hide the image and just show the histogram, you would say we have a bit of a contrasty image. But yet when we look at it, we're not seeing that heavy contrast. Correct? You've categorized it as being rather flat. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's analyze why we would call a contrast image flat. All right. And to do that, we have to look at the parts of the image. Okay. Our brightest section of the image lies right here. Okay. And what are they? Our sky, right? And water, which is doing what? It's reflecting the sky. So we have sky and sky, basically. Okay. And what's in the sky? Well, we have the sun. In this case, it was very overcast, cloudy sky. So what it's doing is it's taking the sun and diffusing it a lot. Okay. Diffused light is beautiful light if you're photographing something that doesn't include the sky, right? But in this case, we're capturing part of the sky. So we have a very bright section, all right, that is only, what would you say, maybe 20% of our image is that bright area, okay? And none of it is in the whites section, all right? If we look here, we can see that everything that would be in the whites is non-existent. There are no white pixels. We have pixels in the light section, okay? So this is our sky, okay? We have some midtones, all right? Middle gray, all right? Some of the gravel here. The gravel's probably a little bit on the darker side than middle gray. All right, we have a little speck there, a little speck there. You know, we have that part of the train, okay? And sprinkled into the water is we have parts that would fall into this section, okay? Mid-gray, right? And you can see it's very, very tiny compared to everything else. Very tiny compared to everything else, all right? And what is left in our image, all right? We have this big hump. Everything else, right? Everything else. So the majority of our image resides in the shadow section of our histogram, okay? So because the majority of the image is shoved over to one side, all right, we see this as flat because the majority is dark. Majority is shadow, all right? Very little contrast just within that section, okay? The only contrast comes when we look at our sky to our ground, okay? That's when we notice the contrast, okay? All right. So understanding that, how do we fix it? What do we need to do? Okay. We need to increase contrast. So how do we introduce contrast to like that section of darkness? Guesses? No wrong guesses. All right, this is how we learn.
See, that's what I meant when I said I was playing around with the histogram, like, and not necessarily the end result, but I'd go over there to the left and see what happens if I drag that towards the center a little bit.
Okay,
Or,
let's
you
try
know,
it. Let's try it. So I'm gonna just I'm grabbing right here and I'm gonna shove and I'm gonna pull. All right, and it's not really doing much.
it's really messing with the shadows.
It opened up the shadows a lot,
Yeah.
okay, but all right, it's not bringing them. It's not coming enough into the middle section.
You have
All
to,
right.
if I remember what you did last time, in order to get a more adjustment on the shadow area, you move the exposure a little bit, and then you gives you
All right.
latitude on the shadow area. I think you had that on one of your explanations before.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Yes. All right. So I tend to use the terms push and pull when referring to the sliders. All right. Because if I move a slider in a certain direction, all right, and actually, let me return this back. Oops. Let's take it off the drawing. Let's return our tones back to beginning. We'll grab the exposure slider like Bob said, okay? If I bring the exposure, all right, so our exposure is this section here. Actually, it's a little wider, okay? If I move it towards the light side, it's going to push this. So it's going to push it and compress it, okay? All right, because that's the direction. The direction of travel tends to be how I determine whether it's a push or a pull. If it's going with the direction of travel, I am pushing, okay? And then that means whatever's behind the direction of travel is being pulled along with it, right? Make sense? So this is being pulled and this is being pushed. Okay? Make sense? All right. So I'm going to take that exposure and I'm going to push it to the light. All right. And you're going to notice that our big hump has gotten a lot smaller. Okay. All right. There's a law in physics that the mass of an object will let me change it. There is a law in animation, okay, that says that the mass of an object that you are animating must be maintained no matter how much you are squishing it or pulling it. So if you looked at the old Looney Tunes where they like Wile E. Coyote, when he falls and he bounces, right? The animation, what happens is the animation as it hits will compress, but it doesn't just compress, it compresses and widens before it springs back up. So it'll come down, widen out as it compresses before springing back up. That's maintaining the volume of the mass, okay, while it's being compressed. So you can see the same thing happening with our histogram. The mass of the hump, which is the number of pixels, it's a very finite number of pixels that create that hump. As I manipulate that hump, okay, we get that squish and compress and elongation. All right. We get to a certain point where it can't elongate anymore and it clips. All right. But we're getting that elongation. All right. And when we squish it down, we're getting the elongation going the other way. Okay. The amount of pixels are still there. Okay. It's just how we're manipulating it. Okay. So now we had that big clump in our shadows area that we now dragged into the exposure part of our image. It brightened everything up. Okay. While it was doing that, it also pushed our highlights up against that wall because it can't go further than that. It went up the wall, elongated, and crushed it. Okay. So now we got to say, okay, well, we got to take our whites and we got to bring them down in order to kind of get everything into that middle. All right. We're trying to get that middle. All right. Okay. There we go. Now we got that middle hump going. Okay. Remember earlier I said you can't always go with that middle hump. Look what it did to our image. Now we can definitely say that's a flat image. That's a very flat looking image. Okay. But there's a benefit to doing this. There's a benefit to the exercise of doing this. All right? Because now we can see that we can push the pixels quite a ways before they really start looking crappy. All right? This is a terrible edit so far. However, there's little gems in here that we can see. All right, because now if we look at the trees, okay, we've brightened the trees, and it's not quite a linear brighten, all right, because the deep shadows are still there. All right, we can see. All right, if we look, we can see areas of deep shadow within our tree line. Okay, we can use that. Everybody follow? Okay. So now we say, okay, well, we took the majority of this hump and we pushed it to the bright side. We now have to pull some of our shadows back in order to create contrast just within that big hump that used to be all the way to the left of our histogram, right? So what can we use to bring some of that back? If we use the exposure slider to open it up, what can we use to pull back those dark colors?
I think shadows, blacks, and maybe, yeah,
Shadows and blacks. Okay, perfect. Shadows and blacks. All right. Which one would you like to try? Okay.
I like blacks.
And the reason being why?
Well, when I get to this, I normally, it's like flip the coin. It's either going to be, well, yeah, it's one or the other. I guess I don't know the difference exactly in the way they work, but
Okay.
I put both of them.
Fair enough. That's a good answer. Okay. They're both going to accomplish what we need, which is introduce contrast between the bright and the shadows of our tree line. Okay. They're going to accomplish it in slightly different ways. Okay. This one slider will get you there faster with a little bit of movement. The other one will get you there with a lot more movement in the slider, but maybe a little bit finer control. All right. However, what we are looking to accomplish at this point, okay, is we took everything that was on the left and we pushed it to the middle. All right. And with that, our black point moved. Okay. What is our black point? The black point is those pixels that are 100% black. Okay. And one of the tools that we have available is as we are moving the sliders, if we press and hold the Alt or the Option key, you're going to notice that our canvas turns completely white. And as we bring that black slider to the dark side, I am your father, Luke. You're going to notice that we're getting some stuff showing up on the white canvas, right?
What was that keystroke to do that?
The
Alt
Alt or Option, all right? So press and hold the Alt or Option and then start shifting that slider, okay? As soon as you start seeing those little pixels, all right, when it goes to black, those pixels are turning to black, 100% black no shadow detail. All right. That's okay. What you have to do is you have to look at the overall effect of what those black pixels are doing to your image. If it's destroying a lot of the texture, a lot of the detail, you can't go too far into it. All right. But it's okay to have black pixels. It's okay to lose some detail. Shadow is shadow is shadow. All right. Shadow is going to help us create form. We can't always see into every shadowy crevice with our natural eyes. So it's okay to lose some stuff. Okay. Now, if you look at my black slider, I pulled that quite a distance before I started gaining. Hey, Bob, do me a favor. I think you're coming
Okay.
across.
Okay, yeah. No, sorry.
That's all right.
I just got to put it on mute.
The black pixels are just starting to come in as we are not all the way at 100%, but we are here at about 60%. We're starting to notice some of those black pixels come in. All right. And it's in the window, it's in the undercarriage. All right. If we look, all right, we can't see the silhouette of our guy in there, so we have to, see how much of that can we lose? All right. Or no, how much of that are we willing to lose? All right. And it doesn't really add to the story if we lose too much there. So I'm not too concerned. All right. But I think at 90%, yeah, that's introducing a little bit too much, because now you can see it on the front face of the locomotive. It's starting to really affect the pixels there. Okay. So those red and yellow pixels, that's dark gray, threatening to be black. When you print it, those yellow and red pixels will be black. All right. So I tend to go where it's just starting to peek in. All right. And that looks good. All right. And 56, 55, 56, that works. Okay. So now, now we've set our black point. All right. So now we got to look. All right. Before, after. All right. Let's go back to -55. Okay. We've gained some contrast in the texture of the background. Okay. All right. So now we can do the same thing with our shadow detail. All right. And we're seeing this area and this area now come in. All right. But if you notice the black areas, all right, we moved that shadow slider quite a lot, and we're not really affecting the black point. All right. What we're doing is we're taking those shadows and we're bringing them closer. We're making them darker, but not black. All right. Up
I
in
always thought you want to raise the shadows.
No, I want to increase my shadows to create contrast in these trees in the background.
Okay.
Okay. Otherwise, it looks flat. See how flat that
Okay.
looks?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right. I want to bring it out. Okay. All right. Because what we're doing is we're correcting for the problem that we created when we shoved everything into the middle. Okay. So what we're doing now here is we're taking and we're evening out our exposure range to fit within the dynamic range of the image. Okay. Or rather vice versa, the dynamic range within the exposure range of the image. Okay. And right now we've only been working on the shadows. And remember, we've been working globally. All right.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, we've set our black point. All right. Salt and pepper to taste. Okay. Now we need to set our white point. All right. And now, if I flip it to what it looked like before, oh, wait a minute. What's it doing? It's going to our before the edit. Okay. Here, I'll do it this way. All right. That's before, kind of dark. The dark area, fairly flat. Okay. The contrast was simply between the ground elements and the sky elements. I'll include the water in that because, like I said, it's reflecting the sky. All right. So we have a big contrast between the sky and the ground. Now what we're doing is we're lessening the contrast between the ground and the sky. Okay. But when we did that, we also lost contrast in our texture. So now we're bringing that texture contrast back. Because remember, we're editing three things: color, or light, color, texture. Light, color, texture. Okay. We can edit them independently, but they coexist together. All right. And you saw the effect of how manipulating the light had a very drastic effect in our texture. Okay. All right. So now if we look at the contrast between the sky, all right, and our ground, all right, it's not as drastic. Okay. So now what we can do is we can ask ourselves, okay, do I need to set my white point? We set the black point. Do I need to do the same thing with the white point? All right. And it's done the same way with the Alt Shift key or Alt or Option key. All right. So the question is, do I set my white point? What do you think?
You have to set that because balance is out. If you don't set it, you're out of balance.
All
with
right.
The difference between the dark and the light.
Okay. So which slider should we use to set our white point? Kind of makes sense to set the whites, right?
Put the same way you did with the black, I think. Put the alt or shift in and then bring it down to the red or whatever shows up. And then you'll be close to where you should be. I don't know if it's going to work out that way.
Yep. All right. So the Alt Option key, all right, except now because we're going to be working with light pixels, our canvas is going to turn black. Okay. When we were working with dark pixels, our canvas turned white so we can see the dark pixels on the white. It'll be the opposite for this. So Alt or Option, we're going to take our white slider. Notice our canvas turns black. We're going to now bring this, and you can see my histogram is now starting to stretch out because it's taking all my white, what should be white pixels, and now we're bringing them to white. All right. And you can see that that is up in the sky. Obviously, clouds should have white in them, right? Okay. So as soon as I start seeing them, all right, I'm going to let go. All right. But what happens? What happens to our scene? Is it the results you were expecting?
No.
Absolutely not. All right. Can you venture a guess as to why it didn't work? All right. I'll give you a hint.
It pulled let's see, it pulled the darks toward the
Flat.
light.
Well, yeah, it does. It does. All right. Again, every action has a reaction. When there's a push, there's always going to be a pull. All right. We can always correct the pull. All right. But in this case, there's something a little bit more obvious that happened. All right. And what we can do is we can refer to Ansel Adams and his zone system for an answer to this. All right. Now we're getting a little bit into the pro level here, guys. All right. All right. Our dynamic range goes from 100% black to 100% white. Okay. We know in this particular scene that we can have, because we have deep shadows, we can have pixels at 100% black. All right. We know this because of the deep shadows. However, can we ask the same question about our white pixels? Was there anything in the image that should be 100% white, no texture, no detail?
I'd say no.
Why no?
Because there's nothing in the picture that's 100% white. It's
Absolutely right.
It's a cloudy day.
It was a shadowy, cloudy day. There were clouds, but they were not white clouds, right? They were not white puffy clouds. They were very much very gray, very clouds. Okay? So by setting our white point to white, we are forcing that light gray that should be there, we're forcing it to go to the light side against what we would normally perceive it to be. Okay? So this is one case where setting the white point does not work because we're setting it in the wrong position. All right? We need to set our white point to a place that resembles our image a little bit more. Now, we've reached a certain
maximum.
Yeah, we've hit a limit to this particular tool. All right. Now, I would like to see a little bit more contrast up here. All right. Because if we look, there is detail there. All right. When I exposed for this, I exposed so that I would not blow out my sky. All right. I was very careful not to blow out my sky. Okay. But the nice thing is because it was overcast, I was able to control my exposure range to within, a smaller dynamic range. Okay. Because there is texture, I can now manipulate it. But there's a problem. I'm maxed out on this particular sliders. Okay. My highlights and my whites, they can't go darker than where they are. Okay. So what can we do? What can we do? What's that?
I was thinking about something down there like with fog and eliminate the fog. What the
Yes,
heck was
let's
that?
absolutely. That's our dehaze slider.
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
word. I couldn't think of it.
All right. We can't
What's
now
going to happen?
remember
Yeah, but we're going to decrease
it's
it.
a global change.
Adjustment.
All right. So we can see how this looks and oh my gosh,
Okay.
look what it's
No.
doing to the color of that of our background. It made it much richer. Okay? Is that something that we can live with?
We can change it.
All right? Or yeah, or we can change it. Okay? Again, these are all artistic decisions. These are all very subjective decisions. Okay? Now, if I go too crazy, look what happens to our sky. Our sky becomes a lot more beautiful. All right? Look at this. We're actually seeing blue and cyans in that sky. Something that was not there when we first started. All right? I'm liking that. I don't know about you guys, but I'm liking that. All right? However, it's having a negative effect everywhere else. All right? Look what it did to everything else. It became overly saturated. Okay? And if we look at our black point now, all right, you can see all that black in the tree line. All right. We can go back to the shadows, right? And open up those shadows. Okay. But yeah, now we're getting that micro contrast. All right. Micro contrast is that contrast you get in detail. All right. See how crunchy that looks? All right. That doesn't look very pleasing to my eye. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bring my dehaze back. I'm going to add a little bit because I do like what it's doing some of the area, right? But at this point, all right, it might be wise to start looking at other tools. Okay? Other tools. So what other tools do we have?
Isolate the sky.
Isolate the sky. Yes. What else? What else can we try?
Linear gradient.
Linear grade. Well, that's a form of isolating the sky. Okay. Uh, so what do you mean isolating the sky? Let's break it down to its fundamental. We're talking about a mask. Correct?
Right.
All right. So we can use a mask. All right. That's a given. We can use a mask. What else can we do? What other tools are available? Oops. I clicked on the wrong spot. One of my favorite tools in Photoshop.
Yeah.
Okay.
The coin.
We can use our tone curve. All right. Now we can't, this allows us to go beyond what those sliders in the basic panel allows us. All right. And the nice thing is we can target. We can target very specific parts. All right. So this little icon here allows us to target, and we can come up here and we can drag it down. It's darkening everything else, but we can now go here and lighten this up. Okay. And now we're getting a bit of an S curve.
Doc, what's going on here? You're clicking on the picture
Yep.
with that little thing and that's determining where you are on that curve and then making the adjustments. Is that how that's
Yep.
working?
So let me reset it. Okay. So I have that little symbol there.
Yeah.
It's a little bullseye. Okay, it's a little bullseye. All right, it's our target indicator. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that. Okay, and as soon as I click on it, notice that our cursor changed. All right.
Yep. Yep.
See, the cursor now has that little target. So now anywhere I hover, you're going to see a marker appear on the curve. All right. So if I go into the shadows, you can see it goes down. All right. In the
Oh, I
shadow
see. Moving
area.
along the curve. Yeah.
Yep. This green is in our midtones. Here we go. This is in our lights. All right. All right. So what we can do is we can say, okay, I want to target the sky. So I'm going to pick a nice bright area. I'm going to click and drag down. All right. Because even though I'm clicking on the image, what it's doing is it's telling the curve which direction from that center point do I want. Do I want to go up, which brightens, or do I want to go down, which darkens? All right. And because it's doing it live, what you see is what you get. All right. I can determine how far I want to go. All right. Now, because it is a curve, you're going to notice that the curve goes all the way from the upper right-hand side, which is our white, no detail, all the way down to the bottom left, which is black, no detail. All right. So that curve is going to be manipulating everything from the white point to the black point. So even though I'm manipulating the sky, it's going to affect everything else, kind of like that spring that I keep talking about, right? So we have to understand we're working globally, all right? So if we brought our sky down, maybe we bring our midtones up, okay? All right, and we're getting there, okay? We can look at this and say, okay, does that look pleasing? Does that accomplish what I wanted? All right. This is before. This is after. Okay. Probably not much, because what I'm noticing, the midtones here along the track. All right. And definitely the midtones here in the water. We're losing contrast. Okay. So this may not be the best solution. Okay. I definitely don't want to affect this area here. All right. So let's return this back. All right. We cannot use that. So let us now go to our mask. All right. Which is the first thing that you suggested. I just wanted to take you on a little trip. All right. So you mentioned the linear gradient. All right. Which we can, but the linear gradient is also going to capture some of that hillside. Okay. But we do have a tool that we can use, right? Which is our sky selection. Okay. So click on that. It's going to use AI to analyze it, and it's going to say, okay, that right there is our sky. Okay. And then we can apply additional sliders to that. So this is independent of everything that we did earlier. However, it's not gaining, it's not masking any of this water area. All right. So you got to ask yourself, do I want to edit the water along with the sky or independently of the sky? Okay. All right. What would be your your thought?
I would do it independently.
Independent.
Independently?
And
Okay, perfect.
and the reason
Yep.
is because you already showed us that there's blue up in there in the sky. So
Yeah,
I
but
think
remember, the water is a reflection of the sky.
yeah, but not that much.
Correct. Correct. So if there is no blue being reflected, it's not going to come out. Okay? But 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. All right? As long as we get the results that we want. All right. So we're going to go independently. And Bob, should we try your dehaze on this now?
A little bit, maybe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's go to our, where is it?
It's in basic, isn't it?
We're going to go to our dehaze.
Yeah.
All right. And look at that. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. We still have a lot of haze on
Haze,
that
the mountains.
back mountain there. We'll have to correct. Okay. But we're taking small incremental steps towards a finished product. All right. So we got our sky. Now we got to target our water. Okay. What do we do for our water? We're going to create a new mask. Anything?
Your favorite.
My favorite?
Yeah.
My favorite is the radial gradient.
Gradient.
All right.
No, the other one. The elliptical one, I think.
Yeah, which is, radial gradient creates the elliptical. All right.
Yeah.
Now, this is a little awkward, okay?
Yeah.
Because we're also getting a lot of the ground.
Then we just subtract that out.
We subtract.
Make it a skinnier
land.
ellipse.
What's that?
Make it a skinnier ellipse.
Well, we need to get all of the water. All right. We need to get all the water, but not necessarily the land. Okay. So what we can do is we can tell Lightroom, just select the water. Don't select the ground. We can do it one of two ways. We can target the water and tell Lightroom, just select this. Or we can target the land and say, remove this from everything. Okay? All right. So one, we are subtracting. The other one, we are not adding. What are we doing? Intersecting.
What?
Intersecting.
Wait a minute.
Okay. All right. So we have add and subtract here. Okay. We could subtract the land.
Yeah.
All right.
I
We
guess
could
when you
subtract the
mentioned
land.
intersect,
What's that?
when you mentioned intersect, I guess I'm pretty unfamiliar with that because I was thinking subtract, but if
Okay.
intersect is something new, we can figure this
Well,
out.
I've covered in the past. If we press and hold the Alt key, we get the intersect button, right? We can also go here and intersect mask width. Okay. And we need something that is going to just select the water and nothing else. So what differentiates the water from everything else?
Trees and water.
Trees and waters, but the program doesn't know trees or water. The program knows pixels. All right, so we got to think in terms of the program. All right, we have luminosity. Okay, and we have color. All right, those are two things every pixel has. Every pixel has some light or dark value. All right, and every pixel has some color value, a hue. All right. So what we got to look at is what differentiates the water from everything else out of those
Green.
two. What's that?
Call it a green, I think.
Color, but there's green in the water,
Yeah.
so we have to be
Yeah.
careful.
All Thank
right.
you.
Water reflects everything around it. So if we can't use color, what can we use? There's only two things: light value or color value.
The light.
Okay. So we will pick a luminance range.
Range.
Okay. And we will sample our bright area. Okay. Now, when it's sampling it globally. All right. You can see that it's sampling it globally. All right. But because it's within our radial gradient, all right, the actual selection is going to be within that. All right. And you can see there's a little bit of spill. All right. So we have to say, okay, we have to contain it to just a very small range of light and dark pixels. All right. And that's where we come to our fine tuning over here. All right. So based on the eyedropper, this is what the program suggests. Okay. But we can change this. All right. The part in the square is the direct effect from our selection with the eyedropper. That's the immediate neighbors for our eyedropper. Everything outside of that square up to that line is how it feathers it so that it blends nicely with its surrounding neighbors. Okay? So those are two things we can manipulate. We can manipulate how much is affected.
Yeah, I know.
All right. So usually what I'll do is, let me bring this back. Okay. All right. There we got most of the water. All right. And then now I'll increase the feather. Okay. We're still getting a little bit up on the land, but we got all the water. All right. So what can we do to just keep it to the water?
Remove, subtract.
We can remove, we can subtract. All right, so we're going to subtract. We're going to use a brush. Makes it easy, absolutely. And we're just going to brush all this out of here. All right, and just like that, we have our water selected. All right. Okay, now we did this with a luminosity range when we did an intersect. Okay, we could have started with a luminosity range, all right, and kind of worked backwards by intersecting it with something else. Okay, all right. But we accomplished what we needed. We got our water selected. All right, I'm going to take the overlay off. And now we're going to use the same tool we used for the sky, right? Might as well. It worked last time. Okay. The nice thing I love about the dehaze slider is it gives us that nice micro contrast, that texture contrast, which I like. Okay. So we got it. All right. I think personally, I think it needs to be a little bit brighter. All right, so I might push the highlights up a little bit. Okay. That doesn't look too bad. All right, and then that's before, that's after. Okay. Look at that. We got that contrast coming in. We darkened it down a little bit. All right. Everybody see where this is going?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Now, again, it's easy when you're being guided. All right. However, you guys came up with the solutions. All right. I prompted it with a question. So when you're by yourself, ask yourself that question. All right. When you ask yourself that question, you already know the answer. You've proved it here. You know the answer. All right. You just got to ask yourself the question. Instead of me asking you, you have to ask yourself. All right. Okay. Now let's put a little bit of attention to our train. Okay. All right. What can we do to our train to make it stand out from everything else? Suggestions?
Clarity, texture, sharpness.
Yes. Awesome. What else? Okay, so you talked texture. Okay. We got two other parts that are available to us, right? Luminosity and color. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have texture. Definitely I can see texture being applied. All right. What about color? Anything we can do with color?
I don't think so.
Okay. How about luminosity? Anything with luminosity? Anything?
I don't know.
You're not seeing it? Okay. All right, let's play around with texture. Okay? All right. We have a lot of texture in the trees. Okay? A lot of texture in the bushes. We have a lot of texture in the water. We have a lot of texture in the sky. Okay? We have very little texture in the train. Okay? So let's add a little bit of texture to the train. And maybe reduce some of the texture in the background? Question mark? Right?
Yeah, that was
Maybe?
my thought when you said that, the train needs more texture, but then, and this is something I deal with, like, okay, now I got the texture where I want it, but maybe I do need to do something about those trees, because
Okay. All right.
to get enough text, I guess what I was thinking is that to get enough texture to be different than the trees, you might add too much texture.
Okay.
Kept thinking of it?
Right. But, okay, we have three elements we can manipulate: luminosity, color, and texture. All right. We already know we have a lot of texture in the background, and we can definitely use texture on the train. Okay. So normally we want some kind of a contrast. So my thought, if we add texture to the train and reduce texture to the background, we kind of shift it opposite of where it is right now.
Yeah.
All right. It won't work by softening the train anymore. All right. That'll just it'll kill the train. The train's the subject. If we soften it too much, it's going to look like crap. All right. So we need to add texture to the train. Okay.
That's why you bring the train as the main part of the feature and
Correct.
subdue the background a little bit.
All right. So
That's what you're saying.
yeah. So we definitely gonna bring up the texture in the train, and we have an option with our background. We can keep it as it is, match the train contrast to the background.
It looks flat.
All right. Well, yes, but remember we have two other elements that work in conjunction. We have the luminosity and we have color. All right. So as long as the texture is not dominant, we can make either or both of the other two dominant, which will help balance the overall look. All right, because we're playing a seesaw with 3 moving parts here. Okay, all right, but we're all in agreement. Our train needs texture. All right, so we're gonna need a local adjustment. What should we use for our train? These are all our options.
I try subject first.
Select
No,
subject.
no,
Bob,
I think you should outline it.
outline it
Like,
like with a brush.
oh, no, that's done on Photoshop. I'm sorry. What I was
Oh,
thinking of,
yeah.
you just go around it and,
Yeah, well,
Options,
yeah, we
okay.
can do that. We can do that. You know, we just use it with a brush,
yeah, or
all right?
object, yeah.
Or objects. Select subject. All right. We can try
I don't
it.
think so.
Yeah, it may fail. All right.
We'll try it.
But we can try it. If we don't like it, we can dump it. So let's try that. We'll go with Brian's suggestion. Okay. And if we click on the show overlay, oh,
Not bad.
I'll be damned. I got a little bit of the rails in the back. I
Yeah.
don't mind that. Okay. I would like to see the rails in the front selected, but it did an awesome job with the train. So I'm happy with that. Are you guys happy?
Yeah.
I'm happy with it.
I'm a little surprised it did that because there's so much in here.
Yeah.
Whereas
I
if
thought-
you click subject, it's like, to me, I was thinking, okay, what subject?
All right. Well, let's
Well, that's what I've been noticing lately, that, just try it and see by the time it does it, more than discussing it. And then this time it worked out.
yeah. So well, let's try select object. All right. I'm gonna select. I'm going to outline this. Let's outline the tracks.
Yeah.
All right, and that's the one that Bob has suggested. All right. Oh,
Huh.
it did the same thing. It didn't get the tracks in the back, and it definitely didn't get the tracks in the front. But we got the same result.
So,
Okay.
A
So
little bit cleaner.
a little bit cleaner, I would agree. It missed the shadow area. I would like to keep that shadow area. So if we go to this one here, all right,
yeah.
I think I like this one better than the other one. So I'm going to go ahead and dump that other one. We'll keep this one. And what we'll do is we'll just add with the brush, I'll add the tracks. Oops. And let's take the auto mask off here because it's doing some crazy stuff. Okay. That's our selection. What do we want to do? We want to increase our texture. All right, so let's take that overlay off. All right. I have go-to numbers that I use. All right. If you guys remember, I tend to, whatever amount of texture I add, I usually apply half of that in clarity. All right. I tend to go, if I want a lot of texture, I'll go 40-20. All right. So let's try that. Oh, look at that. That did an awesome job. It now matches everything else. I like that. You guys are okay with that?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
won't go. I don't like pushing it too much because it tends to make things a little bit too crunchy. But that looks good. That looks good. I like that. Okay. All right. So we have our texture. Good call. All right. What else can we use to isolate our train? Make it a little bit more pronounced.
Let's make it pop.
Let's make it. Yeah. All right. So how do we make it pop?
Bring the background down a little bit.
Okay. We can bring our background down. All right.
A little, not much.
Okay. So if we can do it one of several ways. Okay. All right. So let's think about this. Okay. How do we bring our background down? We select everything but the train, correct?
Well, then you're going to drop the sky too. Do you want to keep the sky like it is, or do you want to drop it?
Yeah, maybe not. All right.
Okay.
I don't know if I want
I
to
have a
drop
question
the,
about all this.
Yeah.
Because if I were doing this, the first thing I would try is I would select that train and then I would invert and duplicate.
That's one way of doing it. Absolutely.
But my question is, when you're doing that, essentially I'm saying everything but the train I'm going to work on as a mask, but I know I've also already got 2 other masks, and how does Lightroom deal with that?
Everything stacks on
Well,
a.
I've got 2 other masks. You got 2 other masks, yeah? You
Yep.
got the sky and
Side of the
the water,
water.
Yeah.
which now
So
become part of that background if I do an invert and duplicate on on everything but the train.
yeah. So everything that the new mask affects. All right. So in this case, all right, let's just do it. All right. So what we're going to do is make a selection of, all right, we have to be very selective about we have to be very selective about what we select. Okay. All right. We want to tell a story. What is this story?
The train's coming down the track
The train's coming down the track. It doesn't have to be anything more astounding than that. Okay. The train is coming down the track. The train and the track are the 2 elements that we need to emphasize in order to tell the story. Make sense?
Yeah.
Makes sense. So I'm not going to select just the train. The train alone is not the story. The train alone is the subject. The track it's on tells the story. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a selection. The easiest one I'm going to do is a brush. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint the track and the train all along with it. Okay. And if we get crazy, we press and hold the Alt key and we can erase. Sometimes my pen tablet sticks. All right. And I think I'm gonna
Make that skinnier.
yeah. All right, because I want it kind of disappearing into that background. All right. Okay, so there's our selection. All right.
Excuse me, sir. Your wife is on line 1. Excuse me.
All right, there's our selection. We
So
want
this is
to
different than the mask selection you did. Mask 3 was just that object mask, right?
correct. That was just
Okay.
to add texture to the train. All right. So now what you said, we want to invert it, right?
Yeah.
Because right now we have the train and the track selected. We want everything but. So we're going to invert. There we go. All right. And if we want, we can clean this up a little bit right there. Okay. Alt key. There we go. And now that we'll turn that off. And we want to darken, right? We want to darken.
You want to darken? You're working with the background now.
Correct.
Yep.
So we darken the background. Ooh.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No.
No?
Matter of taste.
All right. What's wrong with it?
It says whether you darken or lighten it is a matter of taste, I think.
It's a matter of that. Yeah. All right. Darken too
I don't,
much?
it doesn't seem like it gets what we want to get done, which is kind of, by darkening it, it brings attention back to the trees, doesn't it? And we want to focus on the train.
Okay.
That,
All right. All right. So we don't want to darken it. Lighten it?
We'll see what happens. No.
Okay. Maybe bring the highlights. Yes, no, maybe?
Tricky.
Yeah, it is tricky. Very much so. It's a balancing act now. Okay.
I would start by doing a little desaturation and maybe
Desaturation. Oh,
cut back on
okay.
the clarity.
So let's go to the color. We'll bring the saturation down a little bit. And you said clarity.
Yeah, where is it?
All right. We're going to soften up the clarity. All right, we're getting somewhere.
And a little texture, get rid of a little of the texture.
Say that again.
Get those three there that I play around with the texture, clarity, and dehaze and play around with each of those till it kind of,
Are we adding haze or removing haze?
I don't know. I always go both ways and see what's best.
Okay. Well,
Oh, that's not right.
that's not right either.
No.
Yeah, I think
That's not right.
that's a little much, but yeah, they're on the way there with,
In which direction?
well, when you're making it a little more hazy,
Okay.
but
All right. So we added added a little haze. It hazed out the background a little bit more. Remove some of that. Okay. What do you think?
when I'm doing these lately, I haven't been playing much with grain, but is there cases where you want more grain or less grain when you're messing with the background? That one that's right below the effects there. Under,
Yeah, grain is one of those things that can either make or break an image. All right, so yeah, it's not really doing anything. It's not really affecting it that much, so it's, oops.
What you do?
did something.
Yeah.
All right. I'm still in my mask, that's why I just all right.
If we're gone this far, Doug, then we can go back to the sky and the water again if we had to play with it, right?
Absolutely.
As an individual layer.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's go. All right. So actually here we'll call this water, right? We call this one sky, right? This one's train. And we'll call this one tracks. All right. So we'll go to the water.
I don't know if it'll do anything, but
And what do you want to do to it?
I don't know. We lost what we built up before. We lost it
We
by
lost contrast.
changing the whole background scene. So I don't know if we can come back with a little bit.
All right. Well, we're maxing out on dehaze.
Yeah, we're maxing out.
Yeah. And that my idea about the clarity, now that I look at that background on the right, it does look a little too hazy or artificially hazy for the
Yeah.
rest of the
Yep.
picture.
Well, we could always mask that out too.
Is on line 1.
My wife is trying to get a hold of me.
Better answer the boss.
I know. I just hung up on her.
Oh, you're a doo-doo.
I know. I am. All right.
Good thing,
Well,
good thing you're not recording this.
I know. Huh? Well, good thing she doesn't watch these. All right. So let's add a little mask area here. We're gonna see if we can remove the haze on that one. All right, the haze. Oh no, that's
Yeah.
looking like really crappy.
Happy.
All right, we're adding haze to something that we dehazed and hazed again. So no,
Or delete it.
yeah. Now it's starting to really degrade the image. So we have to be careful. All right. Okay, so maybe we remove it from this mask. We can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
With
So
a
we
brush.
go subtract,
Brush.
brush.
When you're doing this subtract, can you set the feather and flow so it's not doing a 100% remove of that? You have that kind of control here, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. All right. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. All right. And if we want, we could even increase um the shadows on the train itself, right? So we can come to our tones and we can go into our shadows. All right. Make that maybe a little bit darker. Or maybe set the black points a little bit more. Yeah, actually. Doesn't look too bad. Oh, too much. All right. Thoughts?
Yeah. It's fine with that subtly, just getting rid of some of that haze in the far away hill there.
Yeah,
Makes it,
yeah. Right here. Okay.
and I got
So,
that little touch of blue when you brought that in when it showed up. It sure kind of changed the whole just a little bit up there, but boy, it changed it
yeah, it does.
from a gray day to a.
All right. So, let's try the tracks. Let's see. Maybe not so much a reduction of clarity. Where was it?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that balance. All right. So let me go and let's see.
If I want minor adjustments, like I usually click on the box and go up and use the up and down arrow, whatever. Final control. That's what I usually do.
Yeah. No, I'm just trying to find. There you go. Maybe a little bit. Remove some of this effect from certain areas. There we go. Okay. All right. The rest is, putzing around, but you guys got to a workable image. Okay. Um, everybody's going to have different opinions I'm sure you guys are saying, I would not have done that. I would have done this, but that's perfectly okay. All right. You edit to your taste. Okay. But the thing that you want to take away from this exercise is that you guys made the decisions. All right. I didn't. All right. I didn't point it out. I let it up to you. All right. You guys analyzed the problem. You came up with the solution. I just kind of like did the handwork for you. All right. That's all you got to do. All right. When you critically analyze your images, the solutions will come to you. You just got to walk through that process. All right. At this point, it's a slow, tedious walk up a hill. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes, where, you're not asking outright the questions in your head. They're, you're coming to them a lot more intuitively because you've experienced it enough times. All right. So, all right. Questions. We went way over time, but this was awesome. Last minute questions. Anybody?
Well, if you got an hour, so I guess I do not understand intersection at all. I'm a math guy and a relational database guy, and intersecting colors and shapes and layers is, I gotta work on.
All
That's
right.
another, yeah,
All right.
I didn't understand it when you mentioned it last time. I see it and I go, I don't know that stuff at all.
Okay. You got two databases. All right. One has a bunch of rows and one has a bunch of columns. You intersect the two, all right? It's where the commonality is.
Yep.
The common area between the twos. Okay? All right. Thank you, Bill, for the awesome question. Thank you, Brian, for the suggestion for this edit process. This is what I like, getting in deep to the questions that you guys have. So, anyway, that's enough for tonight. I think I've worn you guys out.
Yep.
My wife, I hung up on my wife twice.
Oh.
I don't think I can do it again.
Oh,
No.
you are in trouble.
Trouble.
I will
We'll take the
blame.
heat for you.
I will blame
We'll
you
pray
guys.
for you. We'll pray for you.
I will blame you guys. She'll go a lot easier on you
Okay.
guys than she will on me.
Okay.
All right.
We'll take the blame.
Tell
Doesn't know
her
us.
it was my fault because the championship game started 10 minutes ago. And I probably should have said to you, hey, we got to quit because it's the championship game.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I did
yeah.
not do that. So tell her it's my fault for not saying, hey, we got to watch the championship game.
All right, all right. I will do that.
Good. I don't
Guys.
have a dog in this.
What?
I don't have a dog in this.
Oh yeah, neither do I.
Which
So
means the Huskies aren't playing.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Doc.
And we'll see you next week. Okay.
Bye.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Take
Night.
care, everybody. And where are we? There we go.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.